Okay, it is noon, so we can get started. Guys, it is great to see you today at noon. I'm Rob Bergeron. I'm a CREA board member, and today we have Erik Hitzelberger, also a CREA board member. Erik, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Rob. And I'm always happy to be here. But yeah, like I said, I'm a CREA board member. I'm the secretary of the board, but I've been investing here in Louisville for 15 years. Currently own a turnkey operation, and so we buy homes, fix them up, put tenants in there, and then manage after the fact and sell it to investors, a lot of whom are out of state and some of whom are local. We also do some contracting work for other investors. So we're pretty active in the market and in the local area and enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got your hand in everything, which is great. And there's not a lot of smarter people in the industry than you. Today's topic, everyone, is we're going to discuss why we love the Louisville market. And I'm sure we're going to fail to mention a few things that you guys love about the market. So we can add that towards the end. You guys can chime in on what we're missing. I've started a small list myself, but Erik, like you're well-versed, you go to a lot of conferences. What do you see in our market that you're not seeing other places?
You know, I mean, fundamentally, the biggest thing is returns, right? I mean, that's from an investment standpoint, that's where we should always kind of start. What's the the purchase price and what kind of return on investment am I going to get? And when you look at the Louisville market compared to so many others, you get a better return certainly than anywhere on the coast, than Texas, than Nashville, than a lot of these other places where you're getting 2, 3, maybe 5, 7%. But here we're doing double-digit returns on properties that you can buy on the MLS, and that's really uncommon for the rest of the country right now. In addition to that, you have some security in Louisville that you don't have other places. We have a very diverse economy. We've got 5 or 6 or 7 major industries in the area, where some of these other cities, they only have 1 or 2, and so we're not limited to any particular industry. We've got some stability there, and it's a growing market, which separates it from the markets in the Northeast, Detroit or Cleveland or Columbus, where people are leaving. If you're going to buy an investment, you want to hold it for 20, 30 years, and you're in a market where people are leaving. That's a tough situation to be in. We don't have that problem here. So there's just a lot of things to love. It's for those of us who are here in Louisville and who started here, we're lucky and we're fortunate that we're in one of the best markets in the country.
Yeah, we are definitely fortunate. Sometimes I say, I was in LA, I don't think I'd be half the realtor I am, because our market's so great. And then Brandon Turner, talks about how it's just so important not to have one industry booming up the whole economy. Like, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. I'm like a suburb, and we lost AK Steel essentially, and we lost oh my gosh, what was it? Started with NCR, something like that, and it kind of flushed them, and then they just lost LexisNexis to Raleigh as well. So, like, really, if you only have one trick, I mean, Amazon's expanding here. They're opening up a new facility. We've got the U.S. Postal Service. We're within 60% of, or 6 hours of 60% of the continental U.S., which is kind of nice. You can't build that. There's really awesome infrastructure going in between Louisville, Cincinnati, and Columbus, with like warehouse and storage. So it's very lucrative to get into that as well. I mean, obviously the bourbon industry is not getting hurt by COVID-19, and Humana's thriving as well. And Papa John's, it is moving to Atlanta, but pizza is not struggling either. Yum Brands is still staying here, but
we still have a lot of food and beverage stuff between bourbon and Texas Roadhouse and stuff. And even though the Papa John's headquarters is moving, they still have a strong presence here. So. And we've got the military presence with Fort Knox. There's a lot of activity here, a lot of economic growth, a lot of economic potential.
Oh yeah, I did a post about it on Facebook, but not this week, but last week I had 19 conference calls with out-of-state investors because they're hearing it. And Brandon Turner just bought a trailer park here. I think it was in um, like near LaGrange, someone over there, West Point, Kentucky, I believe. David Green's investing here. We've got a lot of big people coming in. Institutional wholesaling companies are coming in. Institutional buyers like what is it? SFR3's here. Roofstock is coming here. They reached out to me. There's a lot of people coming in, and I think collectively the locals expect to have a much higher return than these out-of-staters, because I mean the out-of-staters are like 1% rule. I'll buy it. And we all used to think Main Street Renewal was like crazy because they were willing to buy up to 110% of the value. But with the appreciation, they paid for it for 1 year, and now they're in the green, and they're not going to sell those off right away. And it's not a terrible business model. I mean, some other things that I had pointed out on my end on reasons that we love the Louisville network, or Louisville, well, I like the Louisville network too, but the Louisville market, our property taxes are significantly lower than most of the country. And then the way our school systems are set up with all the busing and whatnot, you really don't need to factor in proximity to schools because they could bus you. So it's just one less thing to even consider when you're purchasing. Other than that, major flood in 1937, we didn't really have a lot of natural disasters. We do have the floodplains moving sometime. Have you had any issues with properties of yours moving into the floodplain or properties you're managing?
I have not had any problems with any moving in. We had a couple move out actually, so that was nice.
And how much should that add value to your properties, getting them out of the floodplain?
I mean, if you just 10, 15, 20%, to get out. I mean, if you look at comps versus what's in and what's out, it is significant. Now, if you're going to do buy and hold, is it tragically bad to be in a floodplain? No, and especially if you can get some private flood insurance or something like that that's manageable. We generally avoid it, but at the same time, it's not the worst thing.
Well, my logic is, I mean, when I send out properties to my clients, I generally put not in the floodplain because they're not looking to pay for that insurance or anything. So if you have stuff in the floodplain, it's really knocking out so much of your viewing audience, if you will. I will plug Frank Miller right here because Frank found an insurance company that is like $40 a month. You should reach out to Frank Miller. He's actually in the group right now, former career president. And then he has a great guy, a surveyor that helps people get their properties higher elevation certificates to, essentially you're going to spend like $200, $300 for this elevation certificate and for him to go out there, but you're going to gain 10, 15% in value. Like that is a no brainer. Brian Himmerly did that on one of his properties and like it jumped the price significantly. And we don't really get a lot of tornadoes. I mean, we are very fortunate. One other small detail that I grew up in Ohio and we have less natural limestone. And so we have water softener systems almost in every house there. And we don't have to have that because we have the natural limestone, which I assume is also gentler on our pipes and whatnot as well and gets more longevity. But I'm not an expert in that field, but it just seems to make sense. I think one other thing too with COVID, it seems like all of the Kentuckians that maybe moved to like Chicago, LA, New York, they're paying for the cost of living there, but they're not getting the benefits, the social life, the rest are the sports games and the concerts. So I think you're going to see and we're already seeing a major migration to like Lexington and Louisville, Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, relative to those big cities. So I think, we're going to have a lot of talent moving in, probably a lot of new businesses moving in. I'm very curious to see what they do with zoning, because I think, you saw Oregon changed all their single family zoning over to multifamily because they were losing the working class, and the working class was getting moved farther and farther out, and they couldn't get anything done. So I think it would be very progressive for Louisville to do something similar. Because we really, you can build out only so far and you've got a river on one side. So I think that would be, I mean, whoever the new mayor is, they should definitely run on that platform.
Yes, there you go.
And then our cost of living is still so cheap too.
It is. And, we did some analysis a few months ago, just based on affordability, right? And what we were really looking at is there going to be a cap really this year on housing prices just due to an affordability standpoint? And what we found out that really with interest rates where they are, that there's a lot of room to run still. There's not, we're not limited on growth. Now, from an investor side, we do have to pay attention to the fact that the housing price is moving faster than the rent, but the rent's going to get there. It just takes a little bit more time. So, but we are still below, from a total affordability as far as your principal and interest payments, we're still well below where we were in the late 90s and the early 2000s, kind of when still before the market got out of control, but when there was a relatively stable market. If you look at what that your percentage of principal and interest was versus your monthly income, we're still well below what that is. So I don't see anything in the immediate future on a macro level that's going to do anything but continue to help the Louisville market.
So based on, property values going up significantly, inventory being so low, have you changed the way you're investing? Are you investing in areas that you didn't used to invest?
We are, we're looking a little bit more around Churchill Downs and some areas like that. I still love, for those of you who are in the area, Shively, PRP, the South End, Shively, PRP Valley Station. For those of you who are out of the area, it's 40216, 40258, and 40272. We love those. I love Southeast Louisville. It's just, you get a really solid 3-bedroom brick ranch in those areas for an affordable price. It's a price that as an owner you can pay, and as a resident that they can afford, and it's a place they can grow and stay. Obviously, from an investment standpoint, you want residents to stay as long as they can, and those houses are extremely flexible in family size and dynamics and everything else. So we like those. We're definitely looking though at, some of the growth areas that, like I said, they're around Churchill Downs, maybe get a little bit more affordability than some of the neighborhoods, and some of the streets are in transition, but you get in there at the right, find one that's kind of far along, and you can get in there and make a difference in the neighborhood. We look at the Newburgh area a little bit as well. That's an area that's been developed a lot recently, and so we're paying attention to where people are going.
Where are you finding that your tenants have the longest shelf life in staying in a property?
Again, just kind of that South End and even Southeast Louisville, you get working class people, whether they work for UPS or they work for Ford or GE, or for nurses or teachers or something. And especially there in the South End, a lot of them have grown up their whole lives there. Their families are there, and they want to be there. If you grew up in Shively, you're probably not even going to move to PRP, right? You're gonna stay in Shively, and that's what your network of support is. And so they and that's what they love the people they live with. They know the area, and they're very happy. And if you can provide them with a good home and a good place to raise their family, they will stay there for as long as they're able.
What's the longest tenant you've had in one of your units?
So I've only been doing this for probably 12, 13 years renting a property, but I think I've got somebody who's been with me for 9.
Wow, that's insane. And think about how many times they're going to end up paying for that house. I mean,
yes.
You're providing a great place to live. Obviously, or they wouldn't be staying that long.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to try to stay on topic today. So we have low cost of living. We have a strong infrastructure. One thing that I think is fairly interesting is we're actually becoming kind of like a data infrastructure hub downtown between El Toro and Jamescape and whatnot. And that's like data is the number one commodity in the world. And so I think it's awesome that we have something to like hang our hat on, because we, I think when they looked, I went to the 2019, I guess they didn't have one last year because of COVID, but they had the commercial meeting where they do the market overview and then the predictions for our market. And they said that we were trailing significantly for tech jobs relative to our peer cities, such as like Columbus, Indianapolis, and Nashville. So it's great to hear that they're doing very well. And even we do have the second largest independent restaurant scene, but I think some of these restaurants that are like falling off, we're going to probably go anyway, and it just kind of tighten things up. And I think we're going to see a revamp downtown, like some of these things that were just lingering. I think downtown is going to become more fun. I know we're going to go through a growing period because it's kind of, if you go out, I went to Chipotle out there and there was no one there, no one. It was crazy.
I'm really excited about downtown personally. I think you see the number of distilleries going in there, and you're going to have this whole bourbon experience and places, new restaurants and stuff like Distill and Reveal and all those others, and we've got speakeasies down there it's just a ton of fun to go find them and have that experience and things. And my wife was from Nashville, and we kind of watched the growth and the development of Second Street and how that all came together. And Louisville's on that path. It's maybe taking a little bit longer. Maybe we should have started earlier, but now that it's moving, you can definitely see it, right? I mean, we went from one little or maybe two distilleries downtown. There's like 9 now on Main Street, 9 or 10, and so it's going to drive some tourism. It's going to drive business down there, and the more people that come to Louisville, the more people who are going to love it. You alluded to this earlier, but Louisville has everything that a major city has without a lot of the major city headaches. It's just small enough. It's big enough that we can have the things that whether you're into arts or the zoo or family events or derby or bourbon or whatever it is you're into, there's something to go do all of the time. But we're 750,000 people. It's not overwhelming. You can get places easily. We've got great road infrastructure, and so it's really enjoyable from that standpoint.
We just need that NBA team, and I think it's more likely to happen now because the NBA they took a huge loss with COVID, and so they usually to overtake that deficit, they're probably going to do 2 expansion teams. That's like the rumor. Seattle's going to get one of them, and the rumor is it's between us and Kansas City for the second team. But man, that'd be huge, and getting our USFL team, Lose City, to the MLS would be significant for the city as well. But even just having the new track and field, I drove by it yesterday, and it looks like it's going to be awesome, and it's just what we need. And you got to think, like, the Airbnb market has been driven down so much. People converted to long-term rentals. The 600-foot rule kind of killed off a lot of them too. And then now you have COVID. I think those Airbnb people are going to really be killing it. Like, I don't know.
There's definitely opportunity. We were on a call just a few days ago, right, about an Airbnb came up, and there's been some people that, like you said, have gone to long-term rentals or different programs, but we still have a huge convention business, and it will come back.
And they just updated that convention center too.
There's tons of people. When I did Airbnb there for a year or two, back when the convention center was operational, and it was filled every week with, Monday through Friday every week with convention center visitors, and then on the weekends we would get people coming in for concerts and all the other activities. So I was really busy when I was doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can make like 3 times what you're making on a rental. I mean, there's more, work involved with turning things over, but gosh, it is so lucrative. Okay, so one thing that's interesting too is, I mean, it's not as great for people looking to purchase right now, but our inventory is disgustingly low. I'm pulling it up right now to pull up on the Flex MLS to look. I believe I looked earlier, it was 1,075 single family homes on the market, 1,087. So we got a little uptick today, but it's crazy. I became a realtor 7 years ago, and it was 5,000 houses. But what you're going to see by this low inventory is just the appreciation is going to be astronomical. I mean, I think I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but in my mind, historically, we average about 7% appreciation. Last year it was 11%. I don't know if it's going to be able to continue at that rate, but if inventory stays this low, it might.
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's places in the city that have averaged that high. Historically, I'll say we've been even lower. Long term, 4% is probably a more realistic number. And if we go back all the way to 2007, 2008 or so, we really kind of had a flat period there from 2008 to 2011. And so we're not out of line, right? It's not a bubble at all. If you were to project that line from 2008 to today, we're around 4.5%. I think we'll probably do between 7 and 10 again this year.
Which is awesome, because if you think about it, you can refinance out every like 4 or 5 years.
Oh, sure, yes. Yeah, you can.
And then your overhead just goes away because like, oh shoot, I need a roof. I guess I'll refinance. Not to say interest rates are going to stay this low. They're not, but still a cool plan to have. I mean, out of pocket expenses if you tank proof it the first time the right way, because then you can go 15 years. But another interesting thing, and I really try not to get into politics at all, but if this loan forgiveness happens as well, people that their debt to income ratios that were getting killed, they're going to be able to afford houses, and it's going to bring more wealth to my generation for sure. So I think that's going to be great. And the more money they have, I think it's going to be good for Louisville. Louisville's a pretty young city relative to some of these other.
It is, and that it really is great. The more ultimately, without like you said, without being political, but ultimately, the more money that's in circulation and the more money that people are actually spending versus and putting into things like investments, the better off we're all going to be. So,
well, and they're willing. The city's finally. We've been pushing for years for them to open up the land bank too, and they just rolled out 500 properties. And I'm wondering if we're going to see some change there. I mean, like, just think about your pride of ownership. I mean, one thing that's not even really discussed is the 30,000 vehicles, abandoned vehicles, are being pulled out of our market right now. And I don't know where they're putting them, but the city of Louisville hired one company to remove all 30 abandoned, burned out vehicles. But that's going to make the city look a lot prettier as well. And I think that's going to be huge for a lot of the areas where it was just like depressing kind of, because it's just one junk car after another. There's this one car I see every time I get off on South Preston off of the highway, and it's gone, or I think it is. I'm 90% sure I didn't see it last time I drove by. But I mean, like, gosh, I mean, just small things like that, like, are going to have really big ramifications. Okay, so in our market, though, obviously you have to pivot towards what the market's dictating. I think right now, and generally speaking, and I'm a realtor. I make money on you buying and selling. I don't think you sell anything in our market right now. Even though things are going crazy, like if you're buying a dilapidated property, I think you burr it no matter what right now. Because the appreciation, interest rates, like it, and at least you can hold it for 2 years and get that long-term capital gains. And it's harder to find the flips as well. Like there's just not a lot coming up unless you're digging them up yourself.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Flipping is very challenging now, just because the acquisition cost is high. Like you said, if you're out there trying to do some direct marketing and finding the deals yourself, maybe you get some opportunities. But from an investor standpoint, and look, we're a turnkey provider, so we sell a lot of stuff, right? But I see what our investors are making. And, I see the growth that they've had in the last 2 to 5 years, and it's phenomenal, and I don't know why, as an investor, that you'd want to sell. I think the market and the conditions are fantastic. I think, every year you kind of get the same thing, right? Oh, these prices are so high, I can't afford this, right? And then a year later or 2 years later, oh, I wish I would have bought 2 years ago. And it's the same. We're going to keep in that pattern, right? So for the people who are taking action, for the people who are jumping on deals, retail price today is going to look phenomenal 2 years from now.
100%.
Thing that I see that dissuades me from that. We've looked at the numbers, the microeconomics and macroeconomics of it. It all works. It looks great. Even through COVID, it's held strong. And I just, for anybody on this call who hasn't started investing, I encourage you to get in. For those of you who are waiting for, I don't know what, stop waiting and get going. You know, I'm acquiring properties and I go through that same thing. Oh, I wish I bought more last year, but.
So, I mean, I was on a call with Mike Butler, Frank Miller, Ed Gibson. I'm blanking the other guy, but he's primo too, for Frank's class. And I asked him, like, hey, you know, what's the harm in overpaying right now? Because, you know, just in 1 year appreciation, you're going to get all that money back, like guaranteed. Yeah. And they were like, oh, well, you make your money on your buy. And I'm still in my mind, I'm like, pay the extra 2,000, pay the extra 5,000. And like in the scheme of things, you know, because here's the deal, right? We're going to have some type of inflation no matter what. Would you rather, you know, be the one paying for it, or would you rather be the one collecting on it with your appreciation on your property?
Yeah. And you know, you talk about making money and buy, there's two ways, you know, people get caught up on the purchase price. The interest rate is a much more powerful factor in this thing. Interest rates are on sale. You know, I mean, to the point that it's as close to free money as you can possibly get. So the government, the lending institutions, whoever you want to consider, is giving you money, and you're going to tell me you can't buy because it's not 5 or 10 or 15% below market value. It makes no sense. It's an excuse. You're standing in your own way. Get out of your way.
Yeah, Eric, while we're on that topic, would you say now, and like this sounds so salesy, but guys, I really don't care. Use whoever realtor you want, whatever. But would now be the time, if you're going to upgrade houses, now's the time to buy, because you're going to have a difficult time convincing people with the interest rate now to move because they have such a great interest rate. I think that's like going to be a huge factor, because there's some people out there that have 5%, 5.5%. Yeah. And it's like, it's going to be hard to move from that and go. Yeah, you get it. Okay. Another great thing, obviously, about our market is this. We've got our awesome CREA. We have 730 members, I believe, or something of that nature. And everyone's so generous and willing to help each other. We're one of the only nonprofit RIAs in the country. We've got great leadership that are established, that have weathered the storm from 9/11, 2008. Now they'll be able to say COVID as well. And we thought we might lose some members during this time, and we're not. We are maintaining, if not growing. I don't know. I just think that you guys are very fortunate. Well, I'm very fortunate that like Tuesday, there's a meetup. There was a meetup yesterday, happy hour. There was a meetup on Monday at Martin's Barbecue. I mean, we had our CREA meeting last Thursday. Then there was something else on Tuesday last week too. There's always something where you can rub shoulders with people doing exactly the same things you want to do. I don't know. I don't think they have this culture everywhere else in the country when it comes to investing. People kind of guard their cards. Also, speaking of that, we also have a poker night, which is the who's who of real estate plays in this poker game. Okay. And then we also have a really good built-in infrastructure. You really can't go wrong with a bunch of realtors in our market. There's a lot of great GCs. There's a lot of great property management companies, hard money lenders, traditional lenders. I mean, we really do have just like really excellent people that treat people the way they want to be treated. And I think that's kind of just a nice thing to have. You just got to know who they are, I guess. And then the only other notes I have on this is we're like a turtle. We're slow to rise, slow to fall. And people come here for cash flow, and they just bonus appreciation for them at this point. And we're not predicated on equity as much as you see on like the East and West Coast. Like right now, you look at some of these New York City properties and Chicago properties in LA, and they price things so high in their A rentals that they're screwed right now. They're like, they don't know what to do. And so a lot of people are going to lose their shirt because this crazy thing happened for a year and a half, if you will. And then it just stinks because someone's going to benefit off of all their work. Kind of like a lot of these little like people that really went all in on the Airbnb. Like, they're losing their shirt now, but really if this had never happened, they would be sitting very pretty. Any other things you want to touch upon, Eric?
Now, No, I think you just covered a lot of things there that are absolutely true. I mean, it's even for people who want to kind of buy a distressed property and effectively do a burr on it. You know, the private money that's available around here is even that much better than other places, right? I know investors around the country. I talk with investors around the country all the time, and they're borrowing money at 15% and 5 points or 3 points or something. And, you know, here it's 12-1 for most of our lenders or something better, you know. And so the money's readily available. The homes, yeah, you've got to work to find them, or you need a good team or a good realtor like Rob there to help you find them. But whether you buy it and want to do some work on it, or like I said, whether you just buy it retail, the returns are there. And so, and the growth is here, and it's just a good, stable. All investments have risk, but it is, to me, it's one of the safer markets to invest and to take on the risk that is inherent to real estate. So I'm thrilled with it. I'm thrilled to be part of this market, and I'm thrilled to be doing what we do every day. So,
well, and my out-of-state investors know this already, but Eric's who I recommend for all of their terms for when they're buying a burr or anything, because I know where he lives. I know he's not going to run away with people's money. He's going to do good work. Definitely not the cheapest, definitely not the most expensive. He's very fair. So if I'm sure any of my out-of-state investors that are on this call, this is Eric. We've got a question from Ann. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'm going to check the Facebook page for questions as well. So, but right now, there are a lot of out-of-state investors coming in and buying up properties. Or is there not more emphasis on keeping the ownership in-state? I know it's easy to call an out-of-state investor, but there are so many investors hungry for properties that are ready to buy. Why go out-of-state? Might come back to bite us later. I hear you, Ann. I think the out-of-state people, I mean, like a lot of these people got burnt in the stock market, and then they'd rather have tangible properties. And when you think about affordability, I mean, you can pay $200,000 for a studio in California. David Green, I hosted a happy hour with David Green in California 2 years ago, and I brought $13.6 million in off-market assignable contracts. I brought a title, property management, etc. And David was like, Rob, people think you're full of shit because they could not believe the returns we have in our entry-level costs we have. So I think I agree. It is crazy. We're creating all this out-of-state investor competition here, but I have institutional wholesalers coming here too to meet that demand, which only gets more inventory out to the general public. Frank Miller is a big believer in the fact that we're going to see an opening up of more properties hitting the market. You got to think too, guys, every house in the neighborhood looks like crap right now. Everybody's grass is brown. There's no leaves on the trees, but the people that drive for dollars, they're going to be driving and seeing grass growing, and they're going to know who to identify and target. So you're going to see a little bit open up there just with the spring. I think we're just, people are recognizing our market and taking advantage of it. I'm popping over to the Facebook right now to look if there's any good questions.
I think
no good questions.
Doing that, just to follow on to Rob's comment there, I think one of the things we have to be careful of as you know, people who live here is that we can get caught up in what was, right? 5 years ago, I could buy a property in PRP for $90,000. Today it's 110 or 120, and I get concerned about that for some reason, right? And an out-of-state investor looks at it and they say, hey, there's a property with a 10% or a 12% ROI, and I'm going to earn good cash on cash versus any other market that I look at where I'm at, like I said earlier, 2 or 3 or 5 or maybe even 7. This is the best market. This is the best investment I can make, right? And we, again, stand in our own way, right? So if we didn't do that, if we didn't hesitate, the opportunity wouldn't be there for some of the out-of-state investors because we know the market. We can act faster. We can make decisions. We just need to do it. For the people who are on the call and are local, you have an advantage. Don't give away that advantage.
Okay. Cheryl Casper wants to know, can you talk a little bit more about opportunity zones? And it's kind of funny because opportunity zones were like the trendy thing, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And then I really haven't heard a lot about it lately. Eric, do you want to give your spiel and I'll just chime in? I'm not as smart about it as you are, I guarantee it.
We don't do a lot in opportunity zones, so I'm not an expert. I can tell you, they do exist. There's certainly some in Louisville and in different areas that are growing. You do want to understand all of the requirements. So, if you as an individual go in there and buy a property in an opportunity zone, that's kind of one thing. And there's requirements for the how long you have to hold it, 7 or 10 years, and how much money you get back or how much tax savings you get from that. Again, the areas are on a map. I know that you can look at them and you have to consider they're on the map for a reason. So you are kind of taking a chance and that the rest of the neighborhood will develop along with you and your investment is protected in that manner.
And Eric, this is a federal thing. This comes out.
Yes.
So it's basically areas that they want to see vast improvement in. But it's interesting because if you really analyze it, there's places in Butchertown that are considered opportunity zones that we would already say are pretty nice already. And it's just a safe place to put it. But the values of these properties go up, which kind of offsets some of the tax benefits because they've gone up because they are in the zone. But I would definitely vet it. And then I know there was a lot of rules that you had to be part of a group sometimes to purchase. Like go ahead, Eric, you obviously know more about it than I do.
No, so, so the biggest thing that you need to understand when you're getting in there, especially when you're doing it as part of a group, right, is who's making the decisions, because the tax benefits occur at some defined point in the future, whether that's 7 years or 10 years. If you're not part of the group making the decisions and somebody decides that, hey, you know what, we've received a lot of appreciation, we've received a lot of growth, and we want to sell at 5 years, or we want to sell at 6 years, and they sell the portfolio, well, you didn't get any advantage from being in the opportunity. You didn't get any tax advantage. So when you're considering opportunity zones and you're considering how you're getting into that, be sure you understand the rules of the party that you're engaging with.
Well, and while we have such a bright mind on our See You at Noon call, let's ask Eric some personal questions, shall we? Eric, like when you're investing, how do you determine if you're going to do put something in your self-directed IRA or if you're just going to buy it outright? Because you're still young, but you're closer to that 59 and a half age as well, relative to me. So I just wonder.
That's a nice way to say that. Thanks, brother.
So I just wondered, like, how do you personally delineate?
So I love investing in my IRA. I love, both. I have a Roth and a traditional, and I like. I particularly like owning real estate in my Roth. So I don't have enough in there that I can just, buy as many properties as I want. At least not buying holes, right? So I do when I get enough money, that's when I decide to put one in there.
Yeah.
And if there are things I could do wholesale or lending or something with the revenue in the meantime, then that's what I'll do with it to try to grow the rest of the IRA. But I do, absolutely. When I buy a property, just as a general property, I think about it as a 20 or 30 year purchase. That, hey, this is what I want to own, and does it meet all of the requirements for that? And usually that comes down to, is it low maintenance or as low as maintenance as I can get? Is it in an area that's stable? Is it a home that I believe somebody can live in for a very long time, and no matter what their family dynamic is or personal dynamic is, would they be happy to live here for a long time? And those are the type of properties that I want. And so if I can buy that in my IRA, that's spectacular. If I can buy it outright, I do that also. But I look for the same type of homes regardless, and because my buy and hold portfolio are ones that I want to keep for a long time, and I want to be able to live off when this is all said and done.
Well, one thing that I think is interesting is like I'm 32, I'll be 33 in March. And I've listened to all these gurus talk about it. And I keep on thinking, all right, it makes a lot of sense. The money's taxed up front. And then any money that grosses is tax free. But like someone was talking about, I think it was Frank Miller, like talking about an older gentleman in our club. And they're wanting to sell their properties now Potentially they've hit the 25 years of depreciation they could claim or whatnot. And now they're getting taxed again, like, not just on their rental income, but they're being taxed on the sale. Whereas you're not in the other thing. So I think someone my age, I'm thinking, all right, for every 3 rentals I can buy one of them at least in there, and then get the others to cash flow to kind of create more residual, parachute money, if you will. But one thing too is just like Harry Borders will tell you, like, if you only need $100 to be good faith for like a wholesale. So that is the easiest way, is do a wholesale deal with your $100 deposit. And that instantly balloons up very, very quickly. And you're only paying taxes on that $100. So there's a lot of value, at least just starting one and having that money in there. I think we'll probably end up bringing Hampton back on to discuss, equity trust and all that stuff. And maybe Denny, who's getting married this weekend. Congratulations to Denny. Guys, do we have any more questions? If not, we're going to ring off, and I'm sure we'll see you soon at noon. Any more questions? Let me check the Facebook page. Okay, okay, here we go. So we are good on questions, at least in regards to that. Jeff is asking. Jeff's an out-of-state investor. Jeff, we have a private CREA Facebook page, which is a wealth of information strictly because the search function. So many people have asked, who do you guys recommend for a reliable plumber? And so I do keyword search plumber, and it's like, I've got 10. And I know all the people in the club, and like, oh, I trust who Chris McCarty says because I trust Chris McCarty. So it's a great resource there. And then you can ask questions. You can find people in whatever industry that you need. You guys have to be paying members of CREA to join the Facebook. So what you can do, if you already are an active member and you haven't been on the Facebook page, there's 2 groups: a public page where we just announce our events, and then we have a private page for the questions. So try to join the private page, and then Lauren Willoughby monitors that and cross-checks to make sure you paid, and then you can join. But guys, it's worth its weight in gold. If you aren't in the Facebook page, sure, you can just reach out to Lauren as well, and she can help you out. Yes, I can add a link to the private page. I am posting it in the chat. But for the people listening at a later date, it's the CREA, Kentucky Real Estate Investors Association. It is the private group. That's where I think the value is. Eric, if you could we'll end on one last question. If you could do anything differently, looking back, aside from buying more, what would you do differently?
I think the biggest thing is to understand your financial goals. When I kind of got in, I was a little bit haphazard for a little bit and was trying to figure stuff out. But I never really sat down and said, okay, what's my real goal here? And then how do I go about doing it? And so I would encourage people to sit down, and especially for buy and hold investors, what's the number you're trying to hit? Is it $10,000 a month, 15, 20, 50, whatever it is? Sit there and identify what it is that would make you happy, and take care of your needs and your wants, and then just focus on getting there. Don't get caught up. There's so many different avenues in real estate. There's so many different things that you can do. Don't get caught up in the distractions. Just figure out your number and focus on it, and you will be surprised at how quickly you can get there.
That's great information, and I think we should all reflect on what's our why and why we're doing things. And Harry Borders, always talks about, and he talked about it, I think, in the last CREA meeting. You're building this ladder, and then you found out you're leaning against the wrong wall. So it is really important. I mean, do you need 100 houses to feel happy and valuable, or 10 paid off good enough for you? That's a great question. It's something we should definitely discuss more. Guys, Eric, I definitely want to thank you for your time. If you can ever get in a room with Eric and talk to him, you should do it, because he is such a wealth of information. I'm Rob Bergeron, realtor with Housing Associates. If you guys need anything, just let us know. We'll see you soon. And thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Rob. See you.